Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Brewer's Minute. So this week, we have a pretty interesting topic, talking about going beyond the basics of looking at your curve in deck building. So the curve, if you're not familiar with it, is really important to Limited. You probably know what it is. It basically refers to how many cards you have of each converted mana cost. So 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops, etc. And basically, this kind of comes from Limited. In Limited, having a good curve is really essential. And in Limited, it's pretty basic for the most part. You want to have some Grizzly Bears for turn 2, some Windrakes for turn 3, some Hill Giants for turn 4, and so forth. Even if you have a ton of powerful 4-drops, like let's say somehow, against all the odds, you did a draft and you opened 20 Kalitas Traitor of Ghet, an absurd card in Limited, you actually would make your deck much, much worse by playing 20 Kalitas Traitor of Ghet than if you played maybe like 5 Kalitas Traitor of Ghet, along with some 3-drops, some 2-drops, some 5-drops, and spread out your mana curve. So it's super important for Limited, but it also comes into play in Constructed. However, in Constructed, the mana curve is a little bit more complicated than the typical Limited mana curve, and there are some considerations beyond simply just how many 2-drops do I have, how many 3-drops do I have, how many 4-drops do I have. So today we're going to take a couple minutes and talk about a few of the considerations to look at when you're building your mana curve and building your decks beyond just simply how many cards do I have of each converted mana cost. So a quick reminder before we talk about curve in deck building, if you enjoy Brewer's Minute and the other series here on the channel, it would be amazing of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button down in the corner of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So first off, you still do want to consider your curve in general. You still don't want to play 20 Kalitas Traitor of Ghet in your constructed deck, or you're going to run into a lot of clunkiness. The problem with playing too many things at one point in the curve is you're not going to be able to do things every turn. You're not going to be able to use your mana efficiently, and if your opponent can play a bad 1-drop, a bad 2-drop, a bad 3-drop, they're going to most likely beat you even if you start playing really powerful 4-drop on turn 4 and don't do anything for the first 3 turns. So the same concerns are there, and you still generally want to break up your curve and have some stuff going on at each mana cost, but in Constructed, there's so many more cards, there's other considerations. So a very basic consideration comes from any mana dorks you're playing. So, for example, if you're playing 1-mana mana dorks like we have in Modern, Birds of Paradise, Noble Hierarch, stuff like that, you are going to get more value out of playing more 3-drops, like Knight of the Reliquary, Liliana the Veil, you name it, than you will playing more 2-drops. Because if you play one of your 1-mana mana dorks on turn 1, you get to jump the curve up to 3 mana. So if you're building that deck, I would expect your 2-drop pile to kind of decrease slightly, and your 3-drop pile to increase more, because mana curve is really about using your mana efficiently and trying to use as much of your mana as possible every turn. So if you are playing a Birds of Paradise on turn 1 and then playing a 2-drop on turn 2, unless you can also play a 1-drop, you're going to be wasting a mana essentially. It's not going to be going anywhere. If you can play a 3-drop, you're going to use your mana more efficiently. The same thing is very true in Standard, except things are a little bit different. In Standard, we have all 2-mana mana dorks. Servant of the Conduit, Hedron Crawler, Uvenwald Captive, that kind of stuff. So in Standard, these cards push you towards 4-drops, where you're going to want to play more Kalitas Traitor of Ghets or Aetherworks Marvels than you would 3-drops. Maybe the most shining example of looking at what your deck is doing and taking advantage of that as far as your curve is concerned is Tron in Modern. So in Tron, you have the potential to make 7 mana with 3 lands on turn 3. That is the goal of a Tron deck. And because of this, Karn Liberated is the perfect card for that deck. You'll notice that the deck does play other finishers. It plays a Wormcoil now and then. It'll play an Ugin here or there. But Karn is the big one, and that's because in Tron in specific, you are set up to make exactly 7 mana, and Karn is the most efficient way to use that mana on turn 3. So instead of wasting a mana on a Wormcoil, you might as well just play Karn. And it also helps that Karn is absurd. The other thing to look at is what is your deck trying to do? And the opportunity cost of playing something at one point on the curve costs you the opportunity of playing something else on that point in the curve. So you might notice in Modern, you don't see a ton of decks that are true Thoughtseize decks and true Birds of Paradise decks at the same time. Most of the time, you're playing like 6 or 7 Birds of Paradise effects with Noble Hierarch and really planning on having one every single turn to really get out of the gates quickly and get to your 3-drops. Or you eschew that package altogether and you play Thoughtseize effects and you play 4 Thoughtseizes and 2 Inquisitions or something like that and make sure you're always going to have a Thoughtseize effect, and then you just go with your 2-drops as normal. So if you look at Jund, you're playing Thoughtseize on turn 1 into a Tarmogoyf, into a Liliana the Veil, etc. If you're playing the Birds of Paradise package, you're more likely to be trying to get to a Wasteland Strangler, a 3-mana Thalia, a Knight of the Reliquary on turn 2, instead of playing a mixture of both. Because if you play both and you're all in on both of those packages, you're going to have games where you have Thoughtseize for turn 1 and no birds, and then you have a Knight of the Reliquary rotting in your hand on turn 2 and you have clunkiness. At the same time, you're going to have draws where you have Birds of Paradise and you don't have a Knight of the Reliquary because you're flooded with Thoughtseizes if you play both. So figure out what your deck is trying to do and embrace that with your mana curve and consider the opportunity cost. It's the reason you don't see decks that are built around slamming a Tarmogoyf on 2, also playing Mana Leak on turn 2, because those cards compete with each other. You can't both leave up Mana Leak, if that's the plan of your deck, and slam a Tarmogoyf on turn 2. So as you're building your constructed decks, make sure to kind of go to the next level with curve. Beyond just piling your cards into the 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop slots, looking at them and being like, all right, that looks roughly even. That's a nice curve there. Try to think about what your deck in specific is doing and how that impacts your mana curve. When are you planning on playing your things? Are you tapping out on turn 2 or are you leaving up a counterspell? Are you trying to ramp into a 3-drop on turn 2 or are you Thoughtseizing into Tarmogoyf? So how your curve is built and constructed depends in large part about how your specific deck is designed to work. And I think that's one of the failings that people miss when they start building decks is they think of their constructed curve in the exact same way of the limited curve, and they just think, okay, I have enough 2-drops, enough 3-drops, enough 4-drops, this will be fine, and they don't go to the next level and consider what the cards in their deck are doing to their mana curve. So think of this next time you sit down to build a deck. I think it will drastically improve your deck building process and make your decks run much smoother. Anyway, that's been our Brewers Minute for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.